Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Beyond the Gatekeepers. I am Bishop Vanessa M. I'm your host and moderator for this evening. And we are so very, very happy to have you here with us on Beyond the Gatekeepers on social media, whether you are watching on Facebook or on Instagram, on YouTube, on LinkedIn, on X, whatever platform that you are watching us tonight. We say hello to you, good evening, and God bless you. We are so glad that you have chosen Beyond the Gatekeepers tonight. Listen, we have a wonderful, wonderful conversation that is in store for you. I have a great woman who is so many things, and she's going to be here to have a conversation with us, and we're going to learn a lot from her, and I'm excited about that. I do something every week, and I will not stop doing that. I will want to shout out everyone who is on with us on tonight. We want you to tell us where you are watching from. That's important. Tell us where you are watching from, city and state, right? So that I can shout you out. And I see so many already coming on. Want to make sure that you will do us a great big favor tonight. Make sure you share. Please make sure that you share this conversation on tonight. Tonight, we have Brother Reginald Nichols. God bless you, Brother Reginald. Glad that you're here, Stockton, California. Faithful Brother Albert Reed. God bless you, Colleen, Texas. Stephen L. Wooten. Good evening from Bartlesville, Oklahoma. God bless you. Bishop Bonnie Radden from Las Vegas, Nevada. Thank you for being here with us tonight, Bishop. And we are still holding your mother in prayer. Lay Pastor Ronnie Jordan is with us. Rancho Cucamonga, California. Elisa Lewis from Sacramento. Monique is with us from Black Women's Religious Activism in Atlanta. I love that. Welcome, Monique. Herbert S. Jones, welcome, my brother. Boston, Massachusetts is here with us on tonight. So very glad. Elder Sharon Gill and Onyx Leon is on Instagram watching us tonight. People are watching on YouTube as well that I've shouted out. Reverend Dr. Tracy Denise Swire, good evening to you from Palm Springs, California. God bless you. Jules Anderson Jr., Franklin, Louisiana. Elder Boaz Parker, watching on YouTube from Philly. Darlene Connell from Queens. Minister David Williams from New York City, tri-state area. God bless you. Sherry James from CSL Reno, Nevada. God bless you. Deacon Ryan is here from Cincinnati. Keith Darnell Wilson is here from Seattle, Washington. Lavinia Bean is here from Cape May, New Jersey. I love the way we stretched out online. Jada Renee Downs is here. God bless you. New York City is in the house representing. I need everybody to make sure that you tag somebody, put it in their messenger, copy and paste it, text them. They are going to want to be a part of this conversation on tonight. So many things are going on in the world, and we can say a lot about it, but we want to keep things in prayer. Those of you that watch Beyond the Gatekeepers, we also want to mention one of our faithful viewers, Bishop Sonia Williams' mother is in the hospital. We want to make sure that we lift Bishop Sonia Williams' family and her mom in prayer. That's very, very important. Sarah Menard, God bless you. Glad that you're here, joining you from Florida. She is our author's forever advisor. I love that. I love when people come back and say kind and wonderful things, and they remember your good works. Maria Harris, welcome on YouTube from Denver, Colorado. Y'all make sure that you share with other folks. Let them know that this is a very, very great conversation. We also have Sharon Gill watching on Beyond the Gatekeepers. And we want to make sure we're talking back to each other as well. Desiree, God bless you from California. Good to see you on. We're still sharing. I know that people are still coming on slowly, but we're not going to delay the time. We want to have this. We want to get into this conversation. And we are trusting the divine that is going to be powerful and transformative to so many of you that are on this line tonight. Okay, let me give you a few things that you should know. Good evening, Pastor Pam. God bless you. Whose report will you believe? We shall believe the report of the Lord. I want to thank God. Pastor Pam shared it already on social media. So I know that she won't mind that I say that the report came back and she is cancer free. You don't have to know her to give God praise. Hallelujah. Just lift your hands up wherever you are, clap your hands wherever you are, and give God praise that she is cancer free. God bless you, Janetta Speece from Durham, North Carolina. Glad that you are here with us tonight. Glad that you are here with us tonight. Let me give you a few things that you should know. First of all, we're going to give away a copy of a book tonight. And so when I tell you, I want you to put hashtag beyond the gatekeepers. That's hashtag beyond the gatekeepers so that you can be a part of the free book giveaway. And I love the way the saints are coming in and just giving God praise for that praise report. Because sometimes you got to give God praise for the praise report. Yes, we can talk about everything that the enemy has tried to do and is doing, but still, we got to give God praise for what God is also doing in the earth. So again, we're going to give away a book. Want you to be a part of that, but we also want to encourage you to purchase the book. That is why we have authors to come on. We want them to talk about their book, but we want to support them. And the ways in which we can support them is to purchase the book. If you can't purchase it for yourself, purchase it for somebody else. But we want to make sure that that is done. Pastor Terry Chan, welcome. City of Refuge is in the house. Pastor Sue is diligently working backstage. But if you look in all your links on all the Facebook pages, on all the YouTube pages, everywhere we are, you can see that a link that tells you how to get the book. All right. So we want you to do that. Trustee Marlene is in the house from Baltimore Unity Fellowship Movement. Thank you so much, Trustee McLaurin, for being here with us tonight. My dear brother Antonio J. Knox is on. Minister Antonio J. Knox is on with us from Atlanta, Georgia. Again, y'all continue to share. So y'all have heard some of the things already. Make sure you like, make sure you share, and we're going to get this conversation started. Tonight, I have the privilege and the honor to be here with Reverend Dr. Almeda Wright. She is the Associate Professor of Religious Education at Yale Divinity School. I love it. And she is the author of this wonderful book that we're going to talk about tonight, Teaching to Live, Black Religion, Activists, Educators. I'm just so excited, and radical social change. I'm so excited till I don't know what to do to have Dr. Wright here with us, a brilliant scholar, a brilliant writer, and she has a gift that keeps on giving. She's done some work before. Dr. Wright, tell us, first of all, say hello to our online audience, and then I'd like for you to tell us a bit about the work that you are doing at Yale before we get into your book.
Well, thank you, and good evening to everybody. Well, it's evening on the East Coast, good afternoon, some other places. And it's just really an honor for me to be here with you all tonight. And I'm so grateful to see also all the spreads and all the people, and to all of the folks who came in, like Sarah and others who came just to hear a little bit and to support. And so I'm always grateful for that. And by the way, anybody who reads something that I write, I can't ever take that for granted. So I am super grateful that you guys have read it, or that you were interested at least in hearing the conversation. I am a country girl from Big Island, Virginia. And so coming and doing these things, it never, ever gets old or stale for me. So at Yale Divinity School, I am currently leading a couple of different initiatives, which are really exciting about. We are working right now on a Communitas initiative, which is a young adult ministry innovation hub, where we're partnering with congregations around the greater New Haven area, as far down as New York, sometimes as far up as Massachusetts. And we're doing this work because we really felt a need and got a grant from the Lilly Foundation to really think about how do we partner specifically with 23 to 29-year-olds to really help them reconnect with congregations, because many of our 23 to 29-year-olds are doing amazing work already. So it's not like we need to fix them or do interventions for them in that way. But many of them don't see congregations as a partner in the work, or have this intergenerational set of supports. And so part of the work of Community Talks is to really just encourage young adults and try to help them build community, stronger networks to continue to do some of the great activism and community building work that they're already excited about. And so that's some of the work that we're doing here at Yale Divinity School. And I'm really excited about that. Also working on another initiative that will be launched probably next year, actually later this year and into next year, is on thinking about parenting and caregiving as Christians. And what does it mean for us to think about passing on or even sharing faith in ways, and how to build confidence around how we think about what we want to invite a new generation of children and youth and older children even into. And so that's another set of research and project that we're launching and really thinking about. And so I'm really excited here. I teach all kinds of stuff at Yale Divinity School, and every time that I get to go to class, I learn something new because my students are amazing. Um, but I'm also just been really grateful to be here now for 10 years. Woo! So I've been at Yale Divinity School for 10 years, and still excited about the work and excited about the ways that people and different partnerships come and help us to grow and to learn.
I have to say that initiative that you just talked about, 23 to 29, that's really a
Mhm.
forgotten crowd,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
People always they're always leaving that age group out. And I love the little ones and I love the teens, right? But
Mhm.
23 to 29 is the age group that you still need to deal with, and you don't have a lot of in congregations, right?
Mhm.
So that's a powerful initiative that I will talk to you more about offline. And then
Mhm.
also this new initiative coming. So you're giving people ways of thinking about revitalizing their ministries. There should be pastors on. There should be people, go and get your pastor, tell them they need to be on this show and hear more things
Yeah.
about what you're saying. And then get some young adults, because I like the way in our conversation, just that little bit of time, you put your students at the forefront.
Mm.
You didn't say everything that you teaching them, but you also was able to say what they are teaching you as well. And that is very, very important. And so I just wanted to make sure that I shouted that out really quickly.
Thank you so much. Mhm.
Yes. So we have really quickly Pastor Tamika from Las Vegas. I see you. Shannon Axe from Las Vegas. Thank you. Cheryl Robinson Moore from St. Louis, all on YouTube. Thank you. James Falther Jr., thank you for being on with us tonight. Deacon Ayana from New Jersey, thank you for being on. I wanted to make sure I said that. This book is amazing. This book is powerful. This book is life changing. This book has a lot of information in it.
Mhm.
And I think that this is something that can be in book clubs. You know, a lot of times we do things around Black History Month, right? And this is what, oh, but this is more than that. This
Mhm.
goes deeper, it goes further. And so I'm going to tell you right now, I'm recommending the book to everyone. Dawn Jefferson is on. Says she loves us both, Professor Wright. God bless.
I
Thank
love
you so
Tom.
much. I want to
Mhm.
start from the beginning. My first question is always, Dr. Wright, what made you write this book?
So this book is probably the book I've always wanted to write. So oftentimes, like when you're an academic, you write books to get tenure or to do a dissertation or to get through a degree. But for me, this one it started out as my love letter to Black teachers. So I really wanted to find a way to capture all of the ways that Black teachers had poured into my life and come into like moments for me when I needed them. Now, mind you, I did mostly public school growing up and things like that. And can count like I need fingers and toes, but I barely had like 20 some Black teachers. And even that is an extraordinary number because a lot of people growing up don't have that many African American teachers or teachers of African descent. And so that's where it started from. But it also evolved out of lots of different conversations. So in my prior work and research, I was primarily looking at young adults, youth and young adults, African American ones. And their activism. And there's always the question of like, well, why is this new generation, or why is Black Lives Matter not religiously affiliated, or this, that, and the other? And I was like, first and foremost, full stop. It's spiritual in ways that many people cannot, comprehend. But I also was wrestling with and trying to help people to understand that it may not be tethered to churches, but most of our activism for the longest time in African American communities has not been specifically tethered into sometimes organized religion or different things. And so I wanted to complicate the narrative. But so that was one set of conversations that kept coming to me. And the other one was around a more burning question for me, because I wasn't always excited about the why is it not religious or why is it religious question, but the question of like, well, wait a minute, if this is something that we want to see connected, what are the models? Who are the people? How are we educating people or training people to really integrate their religion and their like education and their activism and thinking about social change? And so where did I go to? I went to look at, my first person was Septima Clark. Septima Clark was, oftentimes they call her the architect of like the pedagogy behind the civil rights movement. And so
Yes.
she's architect of the citizenship education program. And she, for me, is like the exemplar of the
Mm.
best of like this integration of activist and educator and even religion. And some people were a little suspicious and cautious of Septima Clark's work when they look at her archives and her papers and things like that, because they're like, they don't really know what to do with her religious language or her leanings. And I was like, oh, bring it to me. This is where, I can work with this.
Sure.
Um, and so I started to write, and then as I started to go, at first I thought I was just going to write a book on Septima Clark or an article on Septima Clark, and trying to figure out her as a teacher or an exemplar for new generations of activists, to really help them think about like, are there other examples that we can connect to with history, so that we don't have to reinvent the wheel, or that might just be a source of encouragement. And then as I started going further, I was like, wait a minute. And I think about something I heard from Gloria Latson Billings. It's this idea that this is actually, yes, what Septima Clark did was extraordinary, but it was also ordinary, in the
Mm.
sense of like, we got Black people and Black teachers and Black educators doing this kind of work across the 20th century, even before the 20th century, and continuing into modern day. And so
Yes.
once then I was like, well, I just want to give a couple snapshots, a couple portraitures, if you will, of a lot of these different activist educators, to really help us to get a sense of both the breadth and the depth of the type of folks that committed most of the time their entire lives to this type of radical transformation, and did it through the educational arena. And so that's why that's kind of why I wrote the book. So it's really, I was really excited to be able to kind of go into the archives and do all kinds of good stuff in this one. So this is a fun book to write for me.
Wonderful. Now, first of all, first things first, thank you for the love letter to teachers.
Mhm.
They don't get enough love. They don't get enough respect. They don't get enough visibility. They don't get enough shout outs. They don't get enough pay. So thank you.
Amen.
Thank you for the love letter to teachers. And so, all of you that are in the teaching arena that are on tonight, Bishop Sonia Williams, welcome from Atlanta. Kristen Walker, welcome from Rochester, New York. There's so many people that are coming in. All of you that are teachers, educators, academics, this is a book, and Sean Jenkins is here from the Metro Atlanta area. Dinah Chapman and Trinity Presbyterian Church is here from Montclair. Let me just say that to all of the educators that are on, this is a book that you want to get, and
Mhm.
so it's already inside the comment section, inside the chat sections, whatever you're on in terms of social media, on how to purchase the book. And we will be giving away a book tonight. So I want to make sure that I say that again, put hashtag Beyond the Gatekeepers so that you can be in for the drawing at the end of this conversation. Dr. Wright, let us drop down into the sections of this book. Of course, I always like, and one of the things that has come to life for me since the pandemic is storytelling.
Mhm.
So your first section is telling our own stories. And I love that. I could probably just have sat in that section alone. You start off with Anna Julia Cooper, and you start talking about teaching the voiceless. Tell us more about that particular section, and I'm gonna have you do that probably for all of them
Mhm.
without giving the people too much because I want them to buy the book.
That's right, that's right. Just a little teaser, a little teaser.
Yes.
So that section, teaching our telling our own stories, really actually was inspired by a teacher that I don't include in the book. So it's inspired in large part by Carter G. Woodson. And part of why it's inspired that way, because I saw early in the 20th century, many Black educators had to do this work, and it was part of, under the umbrella of racial uplift, but had to do this work of saying, wait a minute, not only do we have a story to tell as Black people, but we want to be able to tell it ourselves. We don't
Yes.
want it to be told secondhand and often, misrepresenting or talking in different ways. And so Anna Julia Cooper is one of those folks who brilliantly does this. And I loved how she, like, her book, if you're not familiar with it, is A Voice from the South. And recently, a lot of African American feminists have reclaimed that work. It's one of the early Black feminist kind of writings and things. But I wanted to go a little deeper than this book, because she writes this book in like the 1890s, and you're like, wait a minute, how did a formerly enslaved Black woman get not only educated but to write this book? Because the book is a collection of her speeches and
Yes.
essays, because she's been writing and talking to clergy associations and groups of educators, and so she is already on the circuit doing amazing work, and can then collects that into her Voice from the South. And in that book, she's advocating chapter after chapter, verse after verse, for the inclusion of Black women and girls in
Mhm.
this quote unquote racial uplift project, and saying you got to educate them. I
Yeah.
hear that you start in schools for Black men, for Black clergy, for whatever you want to do, but you got to include women and girls. And so and she does it in a very interesting and very sassy way. By the way, also there's a way that when you read some of these letters and narratives from these early Black women, I'm just like, when I grow up, I really want to be one of these full grown sassy Black women. But one of the things that she advocates for early on is really for equal educational opportunity. And what I mean by that is that there often had women's schools or women's tracks or women's courses. And she was like, no, she actually turned down jobs to teach in women only schools early on. She's like, I want to teach Latin, and I want to teach Greek, and I want to teach advanced arithmetic. And she was a linguist,
Mhm.
and went and studied, like, linguistics, and did her whole PhD, by the way, in French. That's a whole nother skill set that most of us just don't even understand. Like, what does it mean to have to go through those kinds of things? But there's a way that she is saying, in her advocacy and also in her scholarship, I want to be able to highlight and create space for people who don't often have voice, like many Black women or even many children of color at that point in history, and even now, to be able to write their own story, or to at least cultivate the skills in which they can begin to chart their own course. So even in going back to the idea of equal opportunity, she never wanted to do just industrial education or just classical education. She's like, all of that should be available to people so they can figure out the ways that they want to contribute to society, and not let someone else from the outside dictate that.
And you know what? It just seems to me that she was very, very serious around the fact that at the end of the day, whatever narrative is told, I'm going to control it.
Mm-hmm.
I am
Oh, for
not
sure.
going to allow anything else to be said about myself or about the women that I am endeavoring to teach.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that that was very powerful of her, and also very courageous and very brave of her, because during that time, I'm pretty sure that she was under a lot of discrimination, a lot of racism, a lot of everything that you can possibly name.
Yeah, she was fighting racism, but she also was fighting sexism within the Black community.
Of course. Wow.
And I mean, like, goes without saying, but it's also one of those things where she, like there's stories that I tell in the chapter where she gets fired from from being the principal of the M Street School, which becomes Dunbar in Washington D.C. So a lot of our ancestors who
Oh, I
anybody
know Dunbar,
right, so
sure.
anybody who
No,
grew up in
I
the
actually have two members of my church that went to Dunbar.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
So M Street, which I think officially was like the National Colored School or something like that, but they called it informally the M Street School. And she was the principal there for a very short period, but she got fired because she actually invited Du Bois to come speak there, and because of the fact that she was not going to let people kind of talk to her any old kind of way. And the editorials that we read about her character, they disparage her character, but they're so sexist and they're so and these are in Black newspapers. I mean, and that was the type of thing where you're just like, what are we like even kind of thinking through in terms of like just to disparage her character in ways that you're just like, well, she must not be very bright. Like, I mean, she seems to be okay, but she's not a good, like, moral
Wow.
leader. And it's like, how are these things put, together because they didn't really know how to critique her. And so you can see a lot of the gendered language that comes because she is doing this amazing work.
And you brought him up. He is the next person,
Mm-hmm.
uh, W. E. Du Bois, that you wrote about. Um, as best as you could in terms, you don't, I want you to just uh kind of like glaze over, don't go all the way down into it, because what I want y'all to do, I want y'all to buy the book. I want y'all to buy the book. This is going to be important that you all purchase this book. There are some churches that have gathered on here, and I love that too. Union Bethel AME Church, Crescent City, Florida, is on with us tonight. I want you to say one thing, if you can, well, two things. Hunting a School
Mm-hmm.
and Du Bois' Complicated Religious Life.
Oh, yeah. So Hunting the School is actually, I think it's not the exact title. So I took that from the his Souls of Black Folk. And so there's Du Bois writes a lot, by the way, on education. And I chose to look at that chapter from Souls of Black Folks because for me, it's the one that personalizes Du Bois the most as a teacher. Like there are
Yes.
other ideas that we get about Du Bois as a scholar, as an editor, as a cultural connoisseur, but he talks and writes lovingly about his students and about this community. And it's his first teaching job in the rural South. And so that one for me is offers the best kind of like snapshot into Du Bois as a teacher. Like, and later on, like you get all of his, very kind of high toned critiques of Black education or calls for a talented tenth, and then some revisions of that kind of stuff later. But for me, it's in this hunting of a country school, of him trying to go find, because it's during the summertime while he's a student at Fisk that he goes off to teach just for a little while in these what he calls behind the veil, like beyond the veil.
Mhm.
Um, and so it's like for me that like those, like whenever I teach that chapter from Souls of Black Folk, and even when I was rereading it carefully for this work, like it makes you tear up to hear the ways that he describes these communities, and he speaks so lovingly about also doing deep political analysis about like both what he's doing in the classroom and how eager and excited his students are, but also how far removed at that point and how disenfranchised this rural community was because of racism, because of poverty. And so so it's a very powerful set of essays. And so I start there to give us a picture of Du Bois as a teacher who loves these students and plays with them and is endeavoring to do, like, to pour into this community there. And then the other thing, in terms of his complicated religious life, many people know Du Bois, like his later stance, being very agnostic, but um, in his two autobiographies, as well as in Souls of Black Folks, and even the Negro Church, is a sociological study that he was doing. You get another picture of Du Bois, of Du Bois who starts like congregationalist, like in Great Barrington, Massachusetts, and wrestles. And I make the claim, and they, yes, buy the book, but I will give them this little teaser.
Go ahead. Go
Teaser.
ahead.
I make the claim that what really pushes Du Bois towards agnosticism is not as much like just his disregard for like what's going on with the church, but the fact that when he gets to Fisk, these people are trying to teach him something that goes against the religion his mother taught him. And that is something that's interesting to me because there's a way that we often don't understand the embedded theology and religious practices of people, even scholars like Du Bois. And so, like, they try to teach him that dancing is wrong and that you should not. And Du Bois is like, wait a minute, my mama took me to, and I found joy in this. How are you going to then say that this is not something that a Christian can do?
And when I saw that, I saw a little bit of holding on and letting go. I said,
Mhm.
okay, so he's like, yeah, y'all not gonna come over and trample over the things that my mother taught me, the things that are actually embedded inside me, even
Mhm.
if I'm not practicing it. I'm not gonna let you,
Mhm.
I'm not gonna let y'all do that. And so
Right.
I really, that struck me. That really did strike me. And then, so let's talk about him. Um, Around the sociological research and the radical education.
Mhm. So with Du Bois, one of the gifts that he gives to the world and that he often is under affirmed for is really creating urban sociology in America. And one of the things that he does really well, particularly for people who study Black religion, is gives us these huge mixed method, quantitative and qualitative studies of Black religious life. And so his 1903, the Negro Church Report, is phenomenal. And it's unparalleled in terms of what it was attempting to do. And it's crazy also, just like for context, that's published the same year that Souls of Black Folks is published, but we often will read Souls of Black Folks, or if we're reading anything from Du Bois, that's what we're reading, and we're not reading the sociological work in the Negro Church. And so in the Negro Church, though, what he's doing really is categorizing and trying to do survey data and collect from the major denominations, and just gives these really interesting kinds of like statistics, and even looks at the number of Black seminaries that have been started by or seminaries and colleges and things that have been started by Black religious communities and
Yes.
affiliated in those ways. And so you get data over data. And he also does some interesting stuff there that points to some of his later Pan-Africanism that starts in this earlier, the way he categorizes it. And so it is just a rich undertaking. And I wish that like it's getting a little bit more reading, but it's still not as popular as some others, in terms of just even like as an exemplar of what we can do. But again, it's not a perfect work, but it's also one that shows us a beginning of evolution of Du Bois, because Du Bois started, I think, hook, line, and sinker, believing that if we just had better data, Black people would be treated better. And then
Yeah.
he very quickly learns the error of that belief.
Yeah.
And it's that, no, you can't, like, we can't give better data to white supremacists. It doesn't matter. They don't care.
They don't care. They do not care. Uh, I'm going to ask this question while it's here. Someone is asking, and remember, if you have questions about anything that's being said tonight, please put the word question. And as long as it's about what we're talking about tonight, then we will ask that question. So you do have a question from Sean Jenkins. He's asking, would you say that W.E. Du Bois is the birth father of Pan-Africanism?
That's well, lots of people will have many different
They
opinions on there,
will.
but he is
Right.
definitely one of the progenitors and early proponents of Pan-Africanism for sure. And he's doing a lot of work in terms of really thinking about and understanding that. Black people in the US would never be free fully
Yeah,
without attaching their lives and their mission and their civil rights struggles, their human rights struggles to Africans all over the globe.
yeah, yeah. Section 2, teaching to live. Um, so let me just ask you a question. Did you name the book before you wrote it, or did you start writing the book and then you named the book?
So I also am terrible. I do this with sermons as well as with like books. The title comes last. So I
Mhm.
wrote this section long before I wrote the title. I figured out how to name the book. Honestly, all I had was the subtitle, Let's Tell the Whole Truth. And I was like, I told my editor, I said, I need something. He was like, well, take this one. And then I was like, let's do it. But it's such an appropriate title
Yes.
because, you know, it alludes to, and I write this in the book, it alludes to Ida B. Wells talking to a group of falsely imprisoned men.
Mhm.
And she tells, and they're, singing about the New Jerusalem. They singing about like God gonna deliver them in the by and by. And she says, why don't y'all pray to live? Stop
Yeah,
singing about over there and demand and, that God come and do something now and work
yeah,
to fix this situation. And so it's an allusion to that pray to live that I thought about the work that she was doing as a teacher and that all these teachers were doing was really about teaching to live because it is trying to equip people to figure out what are the strategies, what are the ways that we can begin to work for change now. Not saying that the by and by or the afterlife is not a place of rejoicing and aspirational hope, but there's also it's a both and there's stuff that you need to learn in order to make a difference and work for change now. So
yeah.
that's
And
the
you know,
first.
there's a theology of so many people, Dr. Wright, that, by and by when the morning comes, I'm waiting for that time too.
Mhm.
But, while I'm waiting for that time, we have to be active. We need to be doing things. So it's not just that great old pie in the sky, but it is really about, what are we doing here and now? And so I definitely resonated with a lot of things that you said in chapter 2, with Ida, in section 2 with Ida B. Wells. And I can understand because it's like, why are you waiting to die? It doesn't have
Mhm.
to be this way. There are
Right.
things that you can do to change what is happening right now. It's the same thing that I say to people now. Like even
Mhm.
in this present climate, in this present moment, we're about to face one of the biggest elections that we know of, and that we don't have to wait, right, until something catastrophic happens. We can do stuff now.
Right.
Dr. Anne-Marie Mingo was on with us tonight, and she was on with us a couple of weeks ago,
Mhm.
and like she said, everybody plays a part. There's
That's it.
something that we all can do to get this moving. Let me let you keep going on. Go ahead.
No, and so yes, so the teaching to live is about like really pulling people into this like what are the things, what are the strategies for now? What are the strategies that you can take place now? There's a double side of this teaching to live as well, because in this section I include Ida B. Wells and Nanny Helen Burroughs, because both of these women are doing very different things, but they're teaching to live in the sense of also teaching people to make a living and teaching people like skills that they need in order to actually improve their share. So this interesting intersection between economic like empowerment and well-being and even sufficiency or independence, which was so important to Black people at this time because they were like, you need more than just a good education. You actually need that education to in the words of like my parents and old people, like it needs to bake some bread. It needs to be able to earn you something so that you can take care of yourselves. And that's the other side. Like, though, so what does it mean to teach people to live and to teach people to make a living and to
Yeah,
teach people to strategize so that they can make a life and fully participate? Because um, a lot of the language and tenor of that, I guess, second 25 years or a quarter century of the 20th century is really around trying to empower Black people to be full citizens like not just in a voting in a political way, but also in a land owning and like what does it mean to be able to own our own schools or own our own churches and establish institutions and be able to fundraise. One of the other things that you'll see about Nanny Helen Burroughs and Ida B. Wells, these are fundraising geniuses. Like they should have, like we can study what they were doing and learn
Absolutely.
master classes on how they're able to do the type of work that they were able to do.
Yes, yes, yes. One more thing about Ida B. Wells. You have something in here around embodied activism,
Mm.
marriage, motherhood, and activism. And it's like a trilogy for her, and she tries to bring it all together. Can you say a little bit about that?
Yeah. So Ida B. Wells, in terms of then this embodied activism, is amazing to me. Like there's stories of Ida B. Wells, like when she has one of her children, I can't remember if it's her first or a later child, where she is trying to quote unquote quit the movement and stop being on the speaking circuit for like lynching, anti-lynching work. And instead she's like, well, just hire me a nurse. If you can hire me someone to watch my child, I'll come and speak. And
Hmm.
there's this way that she's doing this work because she um never like pulls back from the work because the work is so urgent to her. And there's and so that's one component of it, but there's also a way that she even in her commitments to like joining churches or to starting Sunday schools and things like that, she's doing it out of this place of trying to figure out what's the kind of world that she wants to leave for her children. What's the kind of moral example does she want to offer for them? And so she's like, we can't like, live in a world where we don't pay attention to people, black men and women being lynched, like, in Illinois, because she's at that time had moved and been forced to leave Memphis and is now in Illinois. And there she's still writing these anti-lynching uh, editorials and using the power of the press to do all kinds of things. And so there's ways that she's doing, and most of us also don't understand that she's done, like she talks about her work to advocate for colored kindergartens or like childcare in Chicago so that because black women have always been working moms, so that working black moms could have access to better education and childcare for their children. And like all of that's part of her activism.
Powerful. And even with that, you know, when I think about that, something that you're doing in your second initiative,
Mm,
it rings. And I don't know if it's equated or if you're using any of her work to uh, uplift your second initiative that you're doing at Yale around mother and children and all those things. But I started
mhm,
to think about that and make that connection. Section 3, you talk about radical love, citizenship, and education. And I always like to hear about radical love. Certainly, we started off with talking about Septima Clark and her great work, A Born Activist.
mm,
And this book is also not just dedicated to just educators, but is dedicated to activists as well.
mhm.
Can you say a
And
little bit
so
about
yeah, so this one, section 3, of course, like as I alluded to earlier, is where I started, and then I went back and kind of like filled out like the chronology of things. But the radical love for me and this and citizenship are these big concepts that like I could devote entire like books to trying to like piece out both what Clark is doing with that, but also in this section Jim Lawson is doing with that.
Mhm.
And for me, it's also this interesting move because they are making religious and theological claims about what does it mean to be part of not just a beloved community, but what does it mean to like to work with people, to strategize, and to really see to demand first that people see the humanity of black people, but also to see the humanity of all the people that they're trying to collaborate with. And I'm always reminded thinking through this that with Septima Clark, like she lived this long life And in her papers, you have her working and doing this educational work in South Carolina, but also in the latter part of her life, you have her writing editorials and letters to Strom Thurmond, because she's also like, there are no permanent allies and no permanent enemies, and the sense of really trying to do this work. And so it's a little bit rough, and sometimes, like, so she also has many letters, because she's kind of this grandmotherly figure, even at the height of the civil rights movement,
Mhm.
where they're doing trainings, trying to really train people to, like, they have a train the trainer model, and so they're trying to train people to teach literacy so that people could then learn to register and vote. But at some of the training, she's like, well, I would see more of the, like, and we have the emergence of Black Power, and like, they're more radical young people who will come to the trainings who just weren't about this love everybody thing. And so she's like, well, I affirm that, because you can't sing I'm gonna love everybody, I'm gonna treat everybody right, if you haven't started there, or if like you just left being abused and just and harassed. And so she wasn't calling for a blind, like, love of everybody, or us coming together and singing kumbaya, but she's like, you got to really think through and convert to this idea of what does it mean for you, not because of how they're treating you.
That's
and and so there's some really powerful stuff there in terms of even what she's calling for, but also the places where she recognizes the limits of what is possible. And so I remember, like, reading through her narratives and listening to some of her oral history transcripts, and oral histories, and then reading some of the transcripts of those, and really just wrestling with the story she would have of, like, you got to attend to where these young people are coming from when they come to these trainings. They over there crying, they cannot close their eyes and sing these songs that we're trying to encourage, invite people into,
right.
because of the abuses they have
Too much trauma.
just undertaken.
Too
Yeah.
much trauma. Yeah, and I think that, well, your book is right on time, but it's also something that people could have educated folks on, the Black Lives Matter movement and
Mhm.
those young people. Like, we wanted so badly for them to be centered in the church, but that was not their call, and that
Mhm.
was not what it was supposed to be. So when people were gathering around and they want to pray and they want to sing these songs, they could not even comprehend. Not that they didn't know God or Jesus
Mhm.
or whatever. It's just that, you know, trying to bridge the gap and bring those things together for them was just too difficult. So this makes me think about them a lot, right? James Lawson talks about the pedagogy of community and radical listening. Can you say a
Mhm.
little bit about that? Because I think we can use a little bit of that now.
Yeah. So one of the things that Jim Lawson is known for, and praise God, he's still with us, was his pedagogy of really. So one of the critiques early on, or suspicions around him, was that he was not that charismatic king-like preacher.
Mm-hmm.
Instead, one of his approaches was to really kind of gather people and get quiet and listen and try to convey in, and not to lead by emotion or riling up emotion or passion, but to really lead from a place of trying to kind of like unearth what's happening in the communities around them. And so this communal pedagogy and radical listening, for me, also is a way of highlighting the work that he was doing with Nashville students, and preparing them for sit-ins. Because unlike some of the other places where sit-ins took place, he put these students through the paces of this full-fledged, like, they're reading Gandhi, they're reading King, they're reading all kinds of things to prepare. They're reading Jesus. They're, prepare them to convert to this way of nonviolence. But what he's also doing there is really building community. Because
Yes.
even before
Yes.
they were committed to nonviolence, he was teaching them to be committed to each other.
Yes.
When their fear took over them, they kept going because they couldn't let somebody else down. And
Yes.
that's the narrative. And even, like, you'll hear folks like Diane Nash talk about it when she recounts her time in Lawson Seminar, and other folks, Bernard Lafayette, that what they really, like, he did this work of building this community. And it's also an unlikely community
Yeah.
because you've got students from Fisk and American Baptist and Mahari all working together. And if we know anything about classism and colorism, even within the Black community, we recognize that Fisk students most often were not the same ones that were going to be at ABC or American Baptist. And there was an economic gap, there was a colorist gap, and things like that. But Lawson was able in these seminars to pull them together. And in that, he was already doing some transformative stuff in terms of the types of community they were building. He
Mm.
also does something in terms of strategy that he listens to the women, and that's how they get their targets for the lunch counters and the downtown shopping areas, because they're like, these, it was the women's stories of
Yes.
being not being able to like take their kids to use a bathroom or get a cup of juice while they were shopping, and to
Mm.
make to kind of help them to see that this is a place that we should target, and this will help us to kind of have the best leverage, economic leverage, but also ways of making a direct nonviolent direct action place.
Absolutely. Uh, this is your last section in
Mhm.
this book, section 4, Radical Black Religious Education, Post Civil Rights Movement. You speak about Olivia Pearl Stokes, and really quickly, welcome Reverend Naomi Washington Leapart. Thank you for being on
Mhm.
tonight. Uh, Olivia Pearl Stokes. Not many people know about Olivia Pearl Stokes because honestly, I did not know about her until I read your book.
Yeah. So Olivia Pearl Stokes is she's a different kind of figure, but she's still radical. And she is the, for those who don't know, she's the first African American woman to get a PhD or EDD at that time in religious education. So like my official field is religious education. And so I like give shout outs to her, but she's also doing this kind of work that is crazy. So she is making her way through most of like she gets her PhD in the 1950s and from Columbia, from Teachers College at Columbia,
Mhm.
and then proceeds to do all of this National Council of Churches, Massachusetts Council of Churches work to really get them to pay attention to what they're doing for everybody religiously in education, and then goes to the National Council of Churches and leads a coalition on Black church education. And so there's all of this work that she's doing there. But one of the things that I love about her is the fact that she has this unquestionable sense of self worth.
Mhm.
And this is the thing that she is trying to teach to people. Now, it comes off as haughty and probably a little high, minded in some places. But it's also this type of thing that we don't know what to do with her. Like, more white people didn't know what to do with her. This Black woman who is like, I'm here. You hired me. I'm going to do my job. Now, you choose to fire me. That's on you, but I'm going to do my job.
Yeah.
And she kinds of, she gets that and she talks about that, but she also pushes this in this way where she's like, this is what every generation of young Black people need, is this sense of self-worth and dignity, and a way that they can think about this. And so she comes up with models of translating both like Black liberation theology, but even the beginnings of like the Black power movement into religious educational spaces in churches. And interestingly enough, a lot of people think about Black liberation theology. At least I did. I remember I learned about it only in seminary. I didn't learn none of
Yeah.
that in church.
Right.
And so to think that there was this woman in the 70s trying to say, can we rethink what churches should do with this Black liberation theology? If people had taken her seriously, I can't even imagine what Black churches would look like. And so
Yeah.
she's having this impact of really trying to push people to reimagine and think about what's possible, even inside the normative religious structures. She's like, so if this is the structure, if you want to stay in church, how do we transform this so that people are prepared to transform the world? And that's again what you'll also see, if it's not clear at this point, each of the people I highlight are doing this like radical activist education in Black religion in a very different way. So she's giving us a very different kind of entry point into this conversation, but it's still some really powerful stuff that she's trying to accomplish here.
Absolutely. And I want to talk about Albert Cleves, but I know a lot about him because Reverend Earl
Hmm.
Fisher
Yes.
was
Yes.
on the show with his book. Now, I want to invite all of the scholars, the teachers, lay persons, academics, authors. If you're on the line and you have a question for Dr. Wright regarding her book, I want you to make sure you formulate that into a question. Now is the time. We're getting close to the end of the hour, so we invite you to post your questions. Make sure you put the word question in front before so it can be easily seen. So that's going to be very important. Let's talk about Albert Cleage Jr. Cleage Jr.
So Albert Clegg is one of my
Clay.
favorite folks. I was introduced to him when I lived in Atlanta and I could go to the Shrine of the Black Madonna.
Yes.
I knew him first as Pearl Clegg's a brilliant author's father, not as much about the shrines. But what's
Mhm.
happening and what I like about like about Albert Clegg is that he is credited actually. Like if we know anything about Black theology because of Cone was going while he was teaching at Aiden Seminary, was going to Clegg's church in Detroit and learning and hearing this Black man teach about a Black Messiah, a Black Christ. And one of his interesting things, and this is the other part that I love to kind of like when I was researching him, he goes to school, film school, and is doing this visual like imagery work because he has a vision. Clegg has this vision that he wants to be able to transform again Black religious education through visual means. And so
Yes.
he's taking classes with Cecil B. DeMille and trying to think about religious iconography in different ways. And he does this by unveiling this massive mural of a Black Madonna and child
Mhm.
because he understands that you not only need to decolonize people's thinking and their theology, but they need better images. And so what does it mean for him to say that there's a pedagogy or there's a teaching tool in our visual images as well? And that for me is one of those places where you're like, and I think he talked, I allude to it at the beginning. I'm sure Earl Fisher talked about this when he was here, but that sermon that he preaches on that Easter Sunday where he unveils this Black Madonna and child is called the Impossible Conception, making it
Yes.
play off of the words of the Immaculate Conception, but also the fact that for Black people, it was almost impossible to conceive of the divine being in their image.
That's correct.
And what would it mean for them? Because I remember even when I interviewed a lot of Afrocentric Black Christians to really think about, and I remember one young woman when I interviewed her, she said, I could talk about a Black Christ. I could talk about African centered traditions and worship, but it took me years to pray to one, to see
Mhm.
that image when I would actually begin to think about it and imagine it and pray.
And it's interesting that you even say that because people actually still scoff at
Hmm.
the idea of Black imagery in churches. They prefer, I'm not
Hmm.
gonna say everybody, but a lot of people prefer to see a white Jesus hanging on a cross or to see pictures of Jesus with long, stringy blonde hair. And it's just so complicated to explain. Like, you should be happy and excited and to see it, but you have even our own people, uh,
Hmm.
and when I say our own people, I mean Black people
Hmm.
really push back at the It's not just white people that push back at it, it's our own people that push back at it too. Reverend Naomi says that I remember my mom taking me to the Shrine of the Black Madonna when I was a child, and I didn't know how powerful that experience really was until decades later. And
Hmm.
I guess, it's so funny that we don't know how powerful seeing an image of the Black Madonna, seeing an image of Jesus is in our own reflection
Hmm.
until it really happens, right?
Yeah.
Until it really happens. Go ahead.
And it's that starts there. And I don't want to, narrow his stuff down just to the image, but the images were so powerful pedagogically
Mhm.
that we often overlook that. That's why I wanted to lift that up. But he's doing so much stuff in terms of really his theology of a nation within a nation and the way he plays on that, because he's doing nationalism in very different ways than some of the other Black nationalists, but he's also doing all kinds of really rich things in terms of the types of I don't even know. It's like wraparound services would not even be the right thing, but the type of in like ways that he's envisioning for the church and the Black community to be able to support families and parents in this extra education that young African Americans and members of the Shrine needed in order to fight unjust systems. And so it's really some interesting stuff in terms of thinking about the care with which he took, in terms of thinking about their communal life, but also in terms of thinking about what it meant to really help people expand their imaginations and their capacities, for growing in those particular ways. And I
Thank you
remember
so
just even thinking about the liturgy for the baby dedication. Ooh, that was so
much.
powerful to really think about like what they would say over children to invite them and know that there was power and possibility of the next Messiah being in that new child in every Bethlehem, every town and village. And so there's that, and that's all from Clegg's poetry that he's writing, and speaking and preaching to these communities.
You give us a great conclusion, looking back to move forward, reclaiming the revolutionary task of Black religious education.
Mhm.
Say a little bit about it.
So part of the conclusion is really me saying, "Alrighty, I have not left church. I have not left religion. I support and affirm a lot of people who have done that. But for those of us who remain, we have to
Mhm.
figure out what do we do or what do we want to reclaim, in terms of the possibilities for social transformation and radical Black religion being taught in our communities. And so for me, there's something I was always go back to like Bell Hooks and others who talk about the transgressive and revolutionary nature of education. And most of us, when we think about what happens in church schools, we're not thinking revolution. But I'm like, what would it look like, or how can we imagine thinking about that work as revolutionary work too, or preparing people to take these kind of revolutionary actions, and revolutionary not necessarily in a like political or like military coup, but revolutionary in the sense of what would it mean for us to imagine empowering young people with the self-confidence and sense of who they are, but also with the type of skills that they need to navigate this still, these not united and white supremacist United States. What would it mean for us to think about as part of our spiritual and theological education to really begin to imagine what would it mean for us to equip Black people, young and old, with the skills that they need to begin to wrestle and to struggle and to really do the part of living now, of teaching a new generation to live now. And so, and there are congregations around that are doing work, but wholesale, we often still want to see religious education as only being about forming people in very small parts of like a spiritual development, instead of integrating that spirituality with a call to live and to change the world in some amazing ways.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for this conversation. There's one more question. And it says, is there a serious need for religious emancipation in Black Christianity?
Um, I'm not necessarily sure I know what that means. Religious emancipation in Black Christianity. But I mean, I don't know if they can explain more, but I think so. I think there is, in terms of like, if I'm trying to get to a sense of what, yeah, I'm a little bit lost in terms of what a religious
No, it's
emancipation is
okay.
like.
If you can clarify your question, then
Mhm.
we can get it answered. And it may not happen right now, but if you clarify it, we'll go back to it and try to answer that question for you. I want to thank you for such a wonderful conversation this evening, Dr. Wright. Powerful, transformative. I feel liberation down in my soul. And I really want to encourage folks. Pastor Sue put the picture up of the book. I want people to see it. The links are already in the chat. This is Teaching to Live Black Religion, Activists, Educators, and Radical Social Change. And this is what we want you to do. We want you to purchase the book, but we also want you to put hashtag Beyond the Gatekeepers, because we are doing a free book giveaway courtesy of Reverend Dr. Almeda Wright. Thank you so much for that. Everybody said, people are saying they just bought it. They can't wait to read it. Yes, we're giving a copy away tonight. Yes, we are. Yes, we are. Yes, we are. People are saying thank you to you already, Dr. Wright, for a powerful conversation. So here's I guess this is clarity. I'm going to say they're talking about equitable and inclusionary through a New Testament that includes everybody.
So there is, yes. So I think there is a need to really think about what that inclusion looks like, and even the type of emancipation that comes with that. But I think in terms of even just, is that required for Black Christianity? I think what we also are recognizing, and most of many of the educators that we're looking at to translate their work into the 21st century, is really the work of really thinking about the expansive nature of what is included in Black religious spaces. So one of the places to probably take this work further would be to think about, what does this look like for people who are not Christian? And so that's both a project that like is started, but also one that I feel definitely inadequate to do, but I know that that's also part of the conversation. And so I think that's it's a powerful move to read and to move in these particular ways. So
I love that. I love that, and I love your work, and we're very appreciative for your yes. And coming on Beyond the Gatekeepers tonight, I am asking everybody to put in Beyond the Gatekeepers. I'm going to go to a quick advertisement that I need to do, and then I'm going to come back and we're going to do the drawing for the book.
Thanks so much.
Thank you all for joining Beyond the Gatekeepers. It's got to be hashtag Beyond the Gatekeepers. If there's anything else, the computer will not pick it up. Want to make sure that you are in it to try to win a copy of the book. But if you don't, make sure that you make a purchase. We want to appreciate you so much for supporting our broadcast. We appreciate you sending whatever donation that is put on your heart and in your spirit. You can send it to Cash App. And our Cash App is $TFAM annual. Or you can send it to our PayPal at www.paypal.me/TFAM Justice. This is to help us to continue on in this great work, which we believe that the divine has called us to. Beyond the Gatekeepers will celebrate 4 years on next month. And so we want you to help us celebrate that as well. Again, thank you so much. We want to do our drawing right now. I see people are already putting in hashtag Beyond the Gatekeepers. And so we're excited. We want you to win the book, but we want you to buy it if you don't win it. And so we're going to go forward with our selection tonight. Well, Naomi Washington Leafheart is the winner. God bless you, Naomi. That's so funny because she's the person that said, "You're giving away a copy of the book tonight." Yes, and you have to be our winner. Yay is right. Make sure you go to Beyond the Gatekeepers, or you can just text me your full name and address, and we'll send it to Dr. Wright, and she's going to make sure that you get a copy of that book. I am so elated and excited, and I'm going to ask people again, if you know someone else that can use a copy of the book, please purchase the book for them and send it to them. This is how we support. This is how we lift up this continued great work. Thank you again, Dr. Wright. Bishop Flunder could not be here with us due to other things that she had to take care of tonight. But by the grace of God, you all will see her on next week. Dr. Wright, if you have any final words that you want to leave for the people,
I'm
please.
just grateful for this opportunity. Thank you all for tuning in, and just please always stay encouraged to keep this work going, because part of why I write and why I teach is because I need a new generation of people to want to be these types of radical activist educators who are teaching folks to live.
I love that. Did you hear her? Be encouraged. There's so many out here I know that's online with us that are teaching folks to live. Congratulations to all of you all. Reverend Naomi, congratulations to you and to all of you that are here. And we will see you next week by the grace of God.